There's an election coming up in about a month. We thought it'd be a good idea to walk through what's at stake. This is not the normal uniparty election where the Republicans and Democrats are simply different flavors of the same latte, as in a choice between French vanilla and vanilla bean. In fact, the very real differences between the candidates have never been greater. On one side, we have the most vilified man in modern times, the one, the only, former President Donald J. Trump. In 2020, he received more votes than anyone in history other than his opponent that year, President Joseph R. Biden. And we were all set for a rematch. Both men handily won their primaries, and we were treated to a very early presidential debate. We all know what happened. President Biden imploded. He couldn't answer questions. He drifted. All those conspiracy theories regarding his mental acuity turned out to be conspiracy facts, and the whole world saw it. This led to a mad scramble on the Democrat side. We've never had anything like this. The Democrats simply tossed out all the primary results. Nearly 15 million Democrats had their votes overwritten for political expediency. President Biden was threatened that he had to pull out or be removed, according to some press reports. About the same time, a would-be assassin's bullet nearly exploded Donald Trump's head at a rally in Pennsylvania, live on television. Just imagine the chaos if both major party candidates were suddenly removed. Not long after, we were told that the sitting vice president, Kamala Harris, would be the Democrat nominee. No votes, just a selection by party elites and a fawning media. Harris was given 84% positive media coverage, while Trump's coverage was 89% negative, according to the Media Research Center. Sensing a pattern? The elites in the Democrat Party, the government, and the media have hand-selected who must be president. And they pulled out all the stops to make it so. But wait just a minute. There's still an election. You still have a choice. Join me in the Economic War Room, where you will learn how your choice will impact your future. This is the first of a three-part series titled, What's at Stake? Today, we're talking about your liberty. Liberty is a powerful word. From the Oxford Dictionary, it's defined as the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views, or the power or scope to act as one pleases. That's Oxford. The Cambridge version is a little simpler. Liberty means freedom, the freedom to live as you wish or go where you want. For most citizens, liberty means the freedom to practice their religious or political beliefs. There are multiple elements to liberty. There's a financial component. You can't do everything you want unless you have the money. There's a choice component regarding what you want. And there's a speech, thought component. Can you speak freely? Can you think freely? We believe that these three things truly matter: liberty, security, and values. This coming election will impact all three areas, and over the next 3 weeks leading up to this election, we'll examine what's at stake in regard to each of the three. This week's episode is focused on liberty. Who would be better for your liberty, Vice President Harris or former President Trump? The differences are huge, much greater than you might think. Let's start with the economic view. After all, many of our choices come down to money. You have to earn it, and then you can use it either by spending, giving, or investing. The next person in the White House will have a major impact on how you earn, what you earn, how much you pay in taxes, and what you can do with what you have left. Elections matter, and this one matters more than ever. Let's start with one simple fact. Democrats have been in charge 12 of the past 16 years. Trump had one term, and his 4 years were interrupted by multiple impeachments, obstructions, and COVID. And yet, his brief stint reducing regulations and lowering taxes paid off for most Americans. Incomes rose, as did spending power. Take a look at a chart from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity in a July report titled Biden-Harris Regulations Cost the Average Family Almost $50,000. This report was written by Casey Mulligan, Ph.D., professor of economics at the University of Chicago and former chief economist of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. He said, during the first Biden term, new regulations cost almost $50,000 per family, about twice the cost of Obama's first term. By contrast, Trump's regulations cuts saved American families over $10,000. There should be no doubt that President Harris will be pro-regulation. That's her history from California in the U.S. Senate and as vice president. It really does come down to a difference in philosophy. Kamala Harris was raised by a California Marxist economics professor. The Economist magazine labeled him a combative Marxist economist. Even Snopes gave the fact-check true green checkmark to the claim, and retired Professor Donald Harris has not disputed it. The claim is true, Snopes says. Taking a look at Harris's work and the economic school of thought that he professed, we were able to confirm that he inscribed himself in Marxist intellectual tradition. That's the bottom line. He's a Marxist. Snopes says it. What's significant about this is that Snopes is willing to admit it. Harris is proud of her Marxist heritage, and her choice of vice president reflects that same thinking. You know, Governor Tim Walz has privately demonstrated a love for Maoist communism throughout his life, according to many close to him, including students. I'm going to quote from Alpha News from August 17th. The man who says he accompanied Walz on trip to China calls VP candidate Maoist to the core. The former student says he was struck by Walz's adoration for China and its communist ideology. There's no doubt he was a true believer, former student Shad said. I've been trying to tell people this for 30 years. Nobody wanted to listen. At night, we'd go out, we'd walk the street fairs, we'd be buying souvenirs, and Tim was always buying the little red book. He said he gave them as gifts. I saw him buy at least a dozen on the trip, he said. It would be like in Germany buying copies of Mein Kampf. The then student told Alpha News, he's Maoist to the core and should not be underestimated. Maria Bartiromo summed up Walz's Chinese communist ties recently. She had a report where he said he taught English in China, he speaks Mandarin, he ran a business taking students to China, he spent his honeymoon in China, he told Trump to end the trade war with China, and he served on the Congressional Executive Commission on China. The guy loves China. That's not just one student's opinion. His admiration of communism appeared in a Nebraska newspaper in the early 1990s. It said, as high school teacher in the 1990s, Democrat vice presidential candidate and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz appeared to extol life under Chinese communism, telling his students that it is a system in which everyone shares and gets free food and housing. It means that everyone is the same and everyone shares, Walz said during a lesson on communist China's system in November 1991. The doctor and the construction worker make the same. The Chinese government and the place they work provide for housing and about 30 pounds of rice per month. They get food and housing. Walz's remarks were reported in a 1991 article in Nebraska's Alliance Times-Herald that focused on his work on student exchange programs in China. At the same time he was teaching social studies in Nebraska in high school, he was loving and really reflecting communism and socialism. No wonder so many in his Nebraska family oppose him politically. Communism is about collectivism at the extreme, and by definition is the exact opposite of personal liberty. Now, we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to dive into some specific comparisons. There's no question that one candidate is better for liberty than the other, and we're going to prove that right after this break. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
What makes it so difficult in comparing the candidates for president is that you have no idea which Democrat is going to show up. For a while, we wondered which Biden might appear. Now we need to know which Kamala Harris is going to show up. Is it the radical calling for reparations when she ran for president in 2020? The prosecutor who admitted she could ruin any innocent person's life with a swipe of her pen? Or maybe it's the dutiful vice president peddling the president's policies. Or maybe it's the current candidate who now favors border walls, wants to eliminate taxes on tips, and embraces fracking for oil. Here's what I believe. Her original 2020 campaign is the real her. What she is saying and doing today is simply to get elected. A great example is Harris's recent change from the Biden plan for capital gains tax hikes. But isn't this the same woman who a few weeks ago threatened to tax unrealized capital gains? Unrealized gains. Those are theoretical. You know that if you've ever owned a stock that looked like it was up in price, but until you sell it, you don't really have a gain, do you? I know her plan was to tax only 25% of the theoretical gains of people worth $100 million or more. But what if all your wealth was tied up in an internet stock or Bitcoin at crazy prices? Every year you have to sell off 25% just to pay the tax, and that alone could crash a stock market, hurting all of us. Imagine all those rich people selling all at once. This is a woman who advocated price controls on groceries. Other nations that do this end up with bare shelves. And that's who she is. No idea is too radical, and she was raised by a Marxist. At least with Trump, you know what you're getting. We saw his policies, his tax cuts, how the market responded, what the inflation rate was. For the sake of time, let's run through the money aspects of liberty and explain the critical differences between Trump and Harris. For investing, Harris wants to raise the capital gains tax and also corporate taxes. This happens automatically if she lets the Trump tax cuts expire, as she promised to do. The only question is, how high will she take them? Higher capital gains taxes will reduce the value of your investments and hurt the stock market, pensions, and investments in general. This is simply logical and well documented by Republicans and Democrats alike. At least it used to be. The Clinton team put forth a report that says this. Overall, Harris plans for up to $5 trillion in tax hikes, according to recent reports. Another anti-investor approach for Harris is her support of ESG and woke policies. She supports stakeholder capitalism rather than shareholder capitalism. Essentially, this means a company should be run to benefit all of society rather than provide returns to the actual owners. Companies go along because all the officers, the CEO, CFO, and so forth, get paid handsomely to do so. This is what BlackRock was touting. Trump believes that owners should reap the benefits because they take the risks. Essentially, her approach is Marxist and his is capitalist. We've done whole shows on why this is true, but for now, let's just go with the fact that if you take the rewards away from owners, you by definition hurt investors. And if you share rewards of ownership equally, you're implementing communism. We've already discussed regulation. This is what impacts your ability to earn money before taxes. Whether you're looking for a job or wanting to start your own business, regulation makes it harder. That's what the current administration has done. Yes, there's been some job growth, but a lot less than we've been told, and most of those jobs have been on the government payroll. In fact, a recent labor report shows that the Biden-Harris administration has overstated the number of new jobs by 818,000. That's a big number. They've been out, look at all the jobs we created, and 818,000 of them don't even exist. And nearly a third of all the new jobs that were created are government jobs. Government is by far the fastest growth area of the economy. Of course, the goal of communism is for everyone to work for the government. Everything is owned by the government or the party. As for private job creation, according to a recent poll, nearly half of small businesses believe they will be out of business if Biden-Harris policies continue another 4 years. So not only will we not be creating new jobs, we'll be losing a lot of jobs with 4 more years of this. So much for your earnings potential. The one area where you might earn more temporarily under a Harris administration would be with a much higher minimum wage. Of course, that would spark further inflation. $20 an hour is failing in California, just like the $15 an hour failed in Seattle. Now, we've covered investing and earning. How about spending? There are two stark differences. First, Harris policies will increase inflation, and her answer is price controls, which never work. Limiting prices during inflation simply means you have bare shelves and nothing to buy. That was true in communist Russia, and it was true when Nixon tried it here. So here's Washington Post. Washington Post. When your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. Well, she proposed them because she is a communist. Do you really believe that grocery stores are price gouging to make an extra penny? If you apply price controls, you literally end free markets, which will ultimately cause higher rather than lower prices. The main point here is that Harris believes in a command economy under government control. That's how communists do it, and it's how once free nations fall into communism. Let's consider the case of Venezuela, once one of the 20 most prosperous nations in the world. All of that collapsed when Hugo Chavez was elected. According to the Institute for Free Trade, in 2003, Chavez declared war on speculators and imposed price controls, not only on Venezuelan milk, but also sugar, coffee, beef, chicken, pork, grain, and pasta. He also severely restricted access to foreign currency. According to unreliable official figures, price controls caused shortages of basic goods to increase from 5% at the outset to over 22.2% in 10 years. But he refused to learn the lesson about the price mechanism, even as he was unleashing mass scarcity. In 2011, he extended price controls to soap, detergent, shampoo, toilet paper, mouthwash, fruit juice, and other products. To take one example, toilet paper was already scarce in Venezuela when he died in 2013. As the government imported 50 million rolls, and citizens downtrodden but not without a sense of humor shared videos on how to get along without toilet paper. 2016, the scarcity of basic goods reached 82.6% in Caracas. That was the best supplied city in all of Venezuela. Scarcity has only worsened since. As a general rule, if you find a Latin American revolutionary teacher aggressively controlling prices, you will discover a country speeding towards socialist ruin. That's a direct quote. Even as Hugo Chavez led Venezuela to poverty, when he died, he left a multi-billion-dollar fortune of stolen Venezuelan money to his daughter. Price controls work great for the elites, but the people suffer. And that is precisely what Kamala Harris proposed to tackle inflation. Of course, she never considered her role in sparking inflation in the first place, as her tie-breaking vote in the Senate passed with the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act, which resulted in the highest inflation in 40 years. Now, the second difference is how you spend your money, and that's even more important. Trump has promised to reject central bank digital currency, while Harris has undoubtedly embraced it. Let me be perfectly clear. Central bank digital currency is the single greatest threat to your liberty that is under consideration today, period. Now, we're going to need to take another break. When we come back, we'll dive down on CBDC and reparations and then wrap up on personal liberty.
Washington said paper money opens the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Jefferson said paper is poverty. Hamilton said to emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution. The founders hated paper money, so they put a pirate money clause in the Constitution for our state to use. Learn more at transactionalgold.com.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It has to be fought for and defended by each generation.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
In this most critical time in our nation's history, now more than ever, Americans need to align with companies that support our constitutional rights and God-given freedoms. Patriot Mobile supports your values and provides exceptional 100% U.S.-based customer service. Join the movement today. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Before the break, we were talking central bank digital currency. Harris is in favor, Trump is opposed. With central bank digital currency, you don't own your own money. It belongs to the bank or the government, and they give you a use license. That means they can approve or disapprove any purchase you make. They can turn it on or off at will, and they can take it out of your account and put it in someone else's account, like for reparations. And Vice President Harris has endorsed reparations. Let me quote from Daily Signal from September 4th. Harris, at multiple points in her 2020 campaign for president and during her time as senator, appeared to endorse the idea of giving some sort of reparations to the descendants of slaves, though her campaign has not responded to recent requests on whether or not she still supports the idea. Now, her issue in 2019 was how do we implement it? I suspect she remains in favor today, but is afraid of the political pushback if she says she's in favor. If she says, no, I won't do it, she'll lose support on that side, so she stays quiet. Keep in mind that the people supporting her expect reparations, and central bank digital currency could be a sneaky way to implement them. But it's really just income redistribution. She calls it equity. I believe in equal opportunity, but extreme equity is simply communism. Those are a few of the differences in liberty due to economics. But economics is only a small part of the overall liberty differences. Let's talk personal liberties. Even without implementing CBDC, your personal liberties will be at risk in a Harris administration. We'll absolutely deep dive into the personal liberties related to values and security in the third and second part of the series. Things like whether or not the government can take your kids for transgender surgery and so forth. But for now, let's focus on the liberty of personal choice and decision-making. The Oxford definition of liberty was the freedom to live as you wish or go where you want. What would a Harris administration be like in that respect? I saw a frightening 14-minute video from a former Democratic congresswoman who was also a presidential candidate and who served in the military. In 2020, Tulsi Gabbard just destroyed Kamala Harris in the Democrat debate for president. Now, when President Biden dropped out of the presidential race in late July, Tulsi did a Fox News interview and she called out the risks of a Harris administration. And the very next day, she was inexplicably placed on a domestic terror watch list. She was subjected to extraordinary scrutiny. As she explains in her video, she calls it retaliation. It is the opposite of personal liberty. She documents, and what she says is backed by a congressional investigation. It's not liberty when they harass you when you try to travel. And she also gives other examples in her video of how the IRS raided journalist Matt Taibbi's home just as he was testifying in Congress on the weaponization of government. And as she points out, Taibbi didn't owe anything to the IRS. They owed him money. You should watch this video. I'll make sure we put a link to it in the economic battle plan. If Harris will do that to Tulsi Gabbard, you can be certain she'll do it to you. And limiting travel and personal choice is high on her agenda. The Green New Deal and World Economic Forum both speak of 15-minute cities where you're expected to stay in walking distance from your home. These are being implemented in Europe right now. I know the supporters of the 15-minute cities deny conspiracy theories. They're not about control, they say. Do you trust them? You shouldn't. Then there's food autonomy. Remember the World Economic Forum says you won't eat meat implies you will eat bugs? Oh, poppycock, that's false. Until they admit it's true. Bugs are on the menu. How about medical autonomy? You can be certain that Harris supports mandatory vaccination and full-on government takeover of healthcare. She said it herself, full-on government takeover of healthcare. What about other choices? How you cook your food? What transportation you choose? Harris is no doubt in favor of banning gas-powered stoves and gasoline-powered automobiles, even if she keeps them for herself. The point is that the vice president believes in Marxist technocracy rather than leaving you individual choice in just about anything other than abortion, gender, and pronouns. This is especially true in terms of political speech. Her campaign and administration have literally worked to move all opposition off the ballot. There were efforts to remove Trump based on his alleged masterminding and insurrection on the 14th Amendment. When that failed, the lawfare was unleashed to stop him from campaigning and to lock him up. Then there's how Biden was shoved aside when he looked likely to lose. The removing of Dr. Jill Stein from the ballot, the attempted bribery of Dr. Cornel West. In the case of RFK Jr., they worked to keep him off the ballot in some places, but also to force him to stay on the ballot where it would hurt Trump. Bottom line, Harris does not want you having political choice, and it gets worse. She doesn't even want you to have free speech. Consider a 2019 threat to force the government to oversee social media. At the same time, she demanded that Twitter ban President Trump even while he was president, and they did it. Now compare that to actions in Brazil to shut down Elon Musk and X, formerly known as Twitter. We know the government coerced Mark Zuckerberg to shut down and censor any opposition on Facebook. He admitted it. The Twitter files released by Musk show how the government controlled social media accounts. Bottom line, Harris does not support free speech. From Fox News in June, here is Elise Stefanik in New York's 21st Congressional District, and she's proposing re-education camps for Trump supporters. Paula Collins, running unopposed, made the shocking suggestion during virtual town hall. She says, even if there's a blue wave, we need to re-educate Trump supporters. And she suggested camps to do it. Although I don't think we want to call them re-education camps. I'm sure we can find a better way to phrase that. Here's a question. Why didn't Vice President Harris immediately denounce the call for re-education camps for Republicans? Why? Because she and her supporters think they're a good idea. That's my belief. We barely scratched the surface on the personal liberty questions, but I can tell you that a Harris presidency should terrify you. No matter what you think of Trump, you should prefer that over a full Marxian takeover where you lose your economic liberty and personal freedom. This is the Democrats' playbook. They want to pretend to be flag-waving patriots while implementing a Marxist agenda that we know Harris supports. If they can pressure Mark Zuckerberg, intimidate Elon Musk, eliminate the sitting president from attempting re-election, raid the home of the former president and try to remove him from the ballot, attack Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Taibbi, imagine what they can do to you. Tax policy alone is reason enough. Add in CBDC, inflation, regulation, medical autonomy, personal ownership, and ultimately your right to speak. The Harris administration has proven to be an existential threat to your personal liberty. Historian Arnold Toynbee taught us that great civilizations are not murdered, they take their own lives. In a very real sense, today's Democrat Party is the party of assisted suicide, and Kamala Harris is the Dr. Kevorkian ready to assist. Everything I've shared is well documented and well supported. Basically, I believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are true believers in Marxism and Maoism. They will say what's needed to grab power like Lenin, Mao, Castro, and Chavez. That is what's at stake in terms of personal liberty. In the next episode, we'll do a deep dive on security, followed by the next week on values. Now, all of this, we're going to take it and summarize it in our free economic battle plan. And you can get a copy of that at economicwarroom.com. Just sign up for our weekly updates. What we see as a marketplace, our enemies, they view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.